The polished marble floors of Sterling Innovations gleamed under my mop, a mirror reflecting the cold, precise lights of 100 ambition-fueled offices. Every night, after the last executive hustled out, I would begin my shift. Swish, swish went the mop, a rhythm I knew well. For 2 years I had walked these halls, seen these faces, heard these voices. They didn't see me. Not really. I was the shadow, the hum in the background. Elijah, the janitor. They called me that. Sometimes they didn't even bother. Just a nod, a grunt, a quick sharp, "Move that cart, Elijah." That was my existence, in this temple of ambition and profit, where ideas were king, and I was just the cleaner, the silent mechanic of their pristine world. But I wasn't just cleaning. I was listening, watching, absorbing, like a sponge. Every discarded coffee cup, every crumpled market report, every whiteboard filled with complex algorithms, left open after a frantic brainstorming session. I pieced things together. I understood their challenges, their blind spots, more than they knew, more than they could ever imagine. My mind, they presumed, was as simple as my job description. Just last week, I was in the break room, refilling the coffee. Mr. Davies, the marketing director, was on a loud call. He was complaining about user interface friction on their new product, Project Nightingale. Said it was unsolvable. I mumbled, almost to myself. Maybe a contextual help overlay with a natural language processing front end, like a conversational AI assistant, instead of static FAQs. Mr. Davies paused his call. He looked at me, a polite, strained smile. "Elijah, a little tech advice from our facilities team? How quaint." He chuckled into his phone. "Hold on, I have a groundbreaking suggestion from my janitor." He waited for the laughter on the other end. Then he looked back at me, his smile gone. "Stick to the mops, Elijah. That's what you're paid for." The words stung. They always did. But they also fueled me. They were reminders. Reminders of why I had to finish what I started. Why I couldn't just be the janitor anymore. Not to them. My shift usually started at 6. The executive meetings usually ended by 7. But that Tuesday night things were different. Mr. Harrison, the head of innovations, had called an emergency session. A big deal was on the line. A multi-million-dollar partnership with Omnicorp. It hinged on Project Nightingale. I was just finishing the main boardroom, dusting the long gleaming table, arranging the high-backed chairs, preparing the space for their urgent discussions. They burst in. 10 minutes early, faces grim, files clutched tight. Mr. Harrison barely acknowledged me. "Elijah, just finish up quickly. We need this room now. Critical presentation." He waved a dismissive hand, as if shooing a fly. I kept to the edges, my mop quiet, my presence hopefully invisible. But I couldn't leave. Not yet, not without drawing more attention. So I stayed, a phantom in the corner, pretending to wipe a phantom speck off the wall. And I listened. They were talking about Project Nightingale, the same AI platform Mr. Davies had complained about. It was supposed to revolutionize data analytics for small businesses. But it had a flaw, a critical one. It was too complex, too clunky, not intuitive enough. "The beta users are revolting," Miss Chen, head of software development, bit out. Her face was pale. "Complaints are flooding in. We're losing millions. Our stock is taking a hit." The frustration in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Words like bottleneck, stagnation, catastrophe. "We've tried everything," Mr. Davies groaned. "Focus groups, recoding sections. Nothing works. The fundamental architecture is just too dense for the average small business owner." Mr. Harrison slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed. "Does anyone have a fresh perspective? Anything at all? We're bleeding out here. Omnicorp pulls out. We're done. His eyes swept the room. Desperation etched onto his usually arrogant face. He looked past me, but for a split second, his gaze snagged mine. Maybe it was the raw, open desperation. Maybe he was just scanning the room. My mind raced. I had an idea. A simple one. Elegant. Born from late-night coding sessions. From watching countless user experience videos. From seeing the pain points of real people struggling with technology. It was a clear solution. It connected the dots they couldn't see. It was precisely what Project Nightingale needed. I hesitated. Then a quiet voice inside urged me. Say it, Elijah. They need to hear it. And you deserve to be heard. I cleared my throat. A sound that seemed deafening in the suddenly silent room. Sir? My voice was soft, a little rough from disuse in such company. All heads turned. Slowly, eyes widened. Disbelief. Annoyance. Mr. Harrison stared. Elijah? What is it? His tone was a sharp edge, full of impatience. I think I might have an idea, I said, my heart hammered against my ribs. About Project Nightingale, about making it more intuitive for small businesses. A snort erupted from Mr. Davies. He leaned back in his expensive chair, a smirk playing on his lips. Elijah, with all due respect, I think we'll leave the brainstorming to the professionals. Laughter rippled through the room, soft at first, then growing bolder. Some covered their mouths. Others just stared, amused. A woman, Miss Chen, head of software development, chimed in. Perhaps Elijah's insights into optimal floor waxing schedules would be more relevant here. Or perhaps the best way to clean up after a truly disastrous meeting. More laughter. A few heads shook. In pity, perhaps, or pure contempt. Mr. Harrison held up a hand, silencing them. But his eyes, when they met mine, held no warmth, only tired condescension. Elijah, this is a highly sensitive strategic meeting. We appreciate your dedication to keeping our offices clean. But I assure you, we have experts handling the technical aspects. This is beyond your purview. He practically spat the word purview, as if it were a foreign language to someone like me, as if my brain was incapable of grasping such intricate concepts. The heat crept up my neck. My cheeks burned, not just from embarrassment, but from a deep, familiar ache. It was the same ache I felt when the bank denied my mother's loan, not because of her credit, but because of her address. When my father, a brilliant mechanic, was passed over for promotion again and again by less skilled men, because he didn't fit in, because of the color of his skin, because of the subtle, invisible barriers that were very real. It was the ache of 1,000 small cuts. This wasn't about a mop. This wasn't about a cleaning schedule. It was about being invisible, being told your mind didn't matter, your voice held no weight because of how you looked or what job you held, because of the box they put you in. I gripped the handle of my mop tighter, my knuckles white. The laughter continued to echo in my ears. A janitor's tech idea, someone whispered, still giggling. They didn't know. They had no idea. The idea I had just tried to offer. It was the very core of a patented algorithm. An algorithm driving a company they didn't even know existed. A company that was about to change their lives. Forever. My own company. Nexus Solutions. The one I had built from nothing, from a laptop in a cramped apartment. Late nights, early mornings, fueled by instant coffee and sheer stubbornness. With every ounce of my being, and with every cent I had saved. From jobs just like this one, janitor, dishwasher, delivery driver, each one a step, each one a lesson, each one a reminder of the world they wanted me to stay in. In that moment, watching their smug faces, their dismissive smirks, a cold calm settled over me. a terrifying clarity. I wouldn't just tell them, I would show them. I had given them a chance to listen, to acknowledge. They chose to mock. Very well. The game had just changed. I had a phone call to make, a very important one, and it couldn't wait. I finished my fake dusting, quietly, slowly, my eyes fixed on Mr. Harrison. He was already back to his frantic discussion, oblivious. They were all oblivious to the storm gathering just outside their pristine boardroom. I walked out, the mop and bucket clinking softly behind me. My footsteps, usually just a whisper, now felt purposeful, heavy, each step a declaration. I found an empty supply closet. Its cramped space smelled of bleach and despair. But tonight, it felt like a command center. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my second phone, the one they didn't know about, the one I used for everything else, for my real life, my company, my future, my justice. I dialed the number. My voice when I spoke was steady, unwavering, a quiet storm. It's Elijah, the deal. Initiate the final phase. We're moving forward. Tonight, tell them to expect an announcement. A very big one. From Nexus Solutions. I paused. A small cold smile touched my lips. And make sure Sterling Innovations is the first to know. The mop bucket clanged against the polished marble. A dull, familiar sound. Each swirl of the mop was a rhythm I knew by heart. 8 hours here, then another 8 in a different world. No one at Apex Corporation ever looked me in the eye. Not really. I was part of the background, a shadow moving through the silent halls after everyone had gone home. Or, sometimes, a ghost they walked right through during the day. Marcus, just leave that report on Mr. Harrison's desk, will you? And try not to make too much noise. That was Miss Albright from HR, always with a tone like she was speaking to a particularly slow child. Her eyes never left her phone. I nodded, even though she wasn't looking. It was easier that way. They never knew I wasn't just a pair of hands, that my brain was working overtime, even as I wiped down their conference tables. Every night after my shift, I'd head to my small apartment, the one with the rickety fire escape and the view of brick walls. That's where the real work began. My laptop, glowing in the dim light. Lines of code, algorithms, a vision taking shape. Viridian Solutions wasn't just a name. It was my lifeblood. I remembered my father. He worked 2 jobs his whole life. Always had dust on his clothes, grime under his fingernails. He used to tell me, "Son, they might look down on you, but they can never take your mind. That's yours, and it's sharper than any suit and tie." His words were etched into my soul. They fueled me through endless nights. Coffee became my best friend. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not yet. Our technology was simple, yet revolutionary. An AI that streamlined complex data analysis, predicting market trends with uncanny accuracy. It was born from observing inefficiencies, from seeing what the big brains missed because they were too busy in their ivory towers. I'd pitched Viridian to venture capitalists who initially scoffed. A janitor with a tech startup? Come on. But the numbers spoke for themselves. The demo was undeniable. Slowly, grudgingly, they came around. My team, a small but brilliant group, worked out of a rented co-working space downtown. They knew me as Marcus Thorne, CEO. Not Marcus, the janitor. The contrast was stark. One world, I was invisible. The other, I was the leader. One evening, I was buffing the floor in the main lobby of Apex. A group of executives, fresh from a late dinner, walked past. Their laughter echoed. "Did you hear about that new acquisition?" One of them chuckled. "Some small-time outfit. Apparently, they've got some interesting AI, but their founder, a real unknown. Probably some college dropout with a lucky break." His words stung, even though they weren't aimed at me. They were aimed at anyone who didn't fit their mold, anyone who wasn't born into their world of privilege and connections. I kept polishing. My face remained impassive, but inside, a quiet fire began to burn. The due diligence for the acquisition had been intense. My legal team, my financial advisors, they were all operating under strict confidentiality. Apex Corporation had no idea who they were truly dealing with. Not yet. Sometimes a flicker of doubt would creep in. Could I truly pull this off? Would they ever see beyond the uniform? The image of Miss Albright's dismissive gaze, Mr. Harrison's booming condescension, it all piled up. But then I'd think of my mother, her hands, worn from years of factory work, her unwavering belief in me. "You're meant for something more, Marcus," she always said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." And so I pushed on. Each swipe of the mop, each line of code was a step towards the day I could honor her belief, the day I could prove them all wrong. The acquisition was moving fast now. Emails had started flooding my inbox. The integration process, the meeting, my meeting. I continued my night shift, mopping the very floors of the company that would soon be mine. The irony was a heavy cloak I wore. Heavy, but empowering. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from my lead attorney. "Everything is finalized. We have a date for the official announcement." I paused, leaning on my mop handle. The dimly lit executive floor stretched out before me. The silence was absolute. Soon it would be broken. Very soon. The fluorescent lights of the corporate office hummed, a constant drone against the quiet whir of my polishing machine. Midnight usually meant solitude, a chance to breathe. But for me, it meant a second shift. Not just mopping floors, but coding lines of truth. After my janitorial duties ended, I'd head home, the city lights blurring past my worn-out car window. My tiny apartment became my command center. My old laptop, a trusted friend. Hours vanished into the glow of the screen, fueled by instant coffee and a fierce hunger. My idea, my company. It was taking shape, one line of code, one sleepless night at a time. People at work saw a quiet janitor. They saw a man pushing a cart, emptying bins. They didn't see the algorithms running in my head. They didn't see the spreadsheets balancing, the user experience being refined. They didn't see the future I was building, pixel by painstaking pixel. Funding was the brick wall. I remember one meeting vividly. It wasn't at their company, not yet. This was an early pitch, a desperate hope, a small venture capital firm downtown. I wore my best, only suit. It was a little tight in the shoulders, a hand-me-down from my uncle. I'd practiced my pitch for weeks, every word, every data point. The room was sleek, all glass and polished concrete. The investors, 2 men and a woman, sat across a gleaming table. They looked at me, then at my resume. The silence stretched. "So, Mr. Johnson," one of the men, a slick-haired individual named Richard, began. His voice was laced with an almost imperceptible condescension. "You're presenting a revolutionary SaaS platform, and your background is facilities management?" He didn't even try to hide the smirk. My heart hammered. "Yes, sir. My professional experience has given me unique insights into operational inefficiencies in large organizations. This platform addresses those head-on." I spoke clearly, firmly. My voice held the weight of my conviction. The woman investor, her expression unreadable, raised an eyebrow. "And where did you develop these unique insights, Mr. Johnson, while cleaning the CEO's office?" The question cut deeper than a knife. It wasn't just a challenge to my intellect. It was an assault on my dignity, a dismissive wave at my very existence outside their privileged bubble. The other man chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. You know, we typically invest in founders with a proven track record, Ivy League degrees, successful exits, not a man who mops floors. The air crackled with unspoken judgment. My hands clenched under the table. I felt the familiar burn of injustice, the familiar sting of being boxed in, dismissed before I'd even had a chance to truly speak. My ancestors' struggles echoed in that sterile room. The battles for a seat at the table, for a voice, for basic respect. My ideas, I countered, my voice low but steady, are not contingent on my alma mater or my job title. They are built on experience, on observation, and on a deep understanding of unmet needs. I pulled out my tablet, ready to demo. Richard leaned back, crossing his arms. Look, Marcus, we appreciate you coming in, really. But frankly, we see hundreds of pitches a week, and yours, it just doesn't fit our profile. We need someone who embodies innovation, someone with gravitas, someone who can command respect in the boardroom. He looked me up and down, a clear message in his eyes. That's not you. They talked for a few more minutes, polite but firm, their words a blurry drone against the ringing in my ears. I knew what they were really saying. They saw a black man, a janitor. They didn't see a visionary. They didn't see the future of enterprise software. They saw a stereotype. I left that meeting feeling hollowed out, but something else stirred within me, a stubborn, molten core of defiance. Each dismissal was a hammer blow, forging my resolve into something harder, sharper. They wanted a proven track record. I would build it myself, without their money, without their validation. I scraped together what little savings I had. I took out a small loan from a credit union that actually looked at my business plan, not just my background. I found a small team, a group of brilliant, overlooked developers who believed in the vision, not the fancy office. We worked out of my tiny apartment, then a shared co-working space that smelled faintly of stale coffee and ambition. Our first big break came quietly. A small tech blog picked up on our beta. Users started trickling in, then a flood. Our platform, designed to streamline operations and enhance efficiency in large, sprawling companies, resonated deeply. Companies were tired of clunky, overpriced legacy systems. They wanted something intuitive, powerful, and cost-effective. We delivered. Word spread, not through fancy marketing campaigns, but through genuine impact. Our user numbers climbed. Revenue started to flow. It wasn't a waterfall yet, but a steady stream, carving its own path. I kept my janitor job. It was my anchor, my way of staying grounded, a daily reminder of where I came from and what I was fighting against. It also gave me an unparalleled vantage point. I saw the inner workings of a large corporation, the inefficiencies, the communication gaps. My platform was built on solving these very problems. One evening, after cleaning the executive floor, I overheard a conversation in the empty boardroom. Mr. Harrison, the CEO of my current employer, was on a video call. His voice was stressed, almost desperate. Our Q3 numbers are abysmal, Robert. We're losing market share. We need to acquire something, anything, that can give us an edge. A game changer, something innovative, with a proven growth model. I paused, unseen, my dust cloth still in hand. A shiver went down my spine. The pieces of the puzzle, slowly, began to align. They were looking for a game changer. Little did they know, their game changer was meticulously cleaning their floors, day after day. My phone buzzed. It was my lead investor, the one who actually saw potential. Marcus, his voice was excited. We just received a preliminary acquisition offer, a very substantial one, from a major player. They're calling it a strategic necessity. My heart pounded. This was it, the moment I'd worked toward, dreamed of. I had a choice to make: accept the offer or play the long game. Ember Solutions was no longer just a startup, it was a force. We had navigated the treacherous waters of tech, survived the lean years, and now we were thriving. Our Series B funding round had closed, not just successfully, but spectacularly. The valuation sent ripples through the industry. My team, a diverse group of brilliant minds, had built something truly revolutionary, something that validated every sleepless night, every discarded prototype, every pitch I had delivered, every investor who had looked at me with that familiar, almost imperceptible doubt. It all fueled me. I learned to speak not just with conviction, but with data. I learned to project an air of quiet confidence that left no room for question, only respect. This wasn't just about building a product. It was about building a statement that defied expectations, especially those placed upon a black man from my background. I sat in my office, the city sprawling beneath me, a stark contrast to the small apartment where this idea had first sparked. The memory of that conference room, the one at Stanton Technologies, still vivid. The stale air, the flickering fluorescent lights, the faces of Mr. Harrison, Miss Davies, Mr. Henderson, their smirks, their dismissive waves, their casual cruelty. It wasn't just my idea they mocked. It was my very presence, my ambition. It was the audacity of a janitor daring to dream beyond his mop and bucket. Success was sweet, yes, but it wasn't complete. Not yet. There was a void, a lingering echo of that humiliation that demanded more than just personal triumph. It demanded rectification. It demanded a rebalancing of the scales. We need to expand aggressively, Maria, I told my chief operations officer. She was a no-nonsense strategist, sharp as a tack, and utterly loyal. I have a specific target in mind for acquisition. She leaned forward, her gaze intense. Who are we looking at? Stanton Technologies, I stated, my voice level, betraying none of the deep-seated history behind the name. Maria blinked, her usual composure momentarily faltering. Stanton? The legacy giant? They're old school. Their tech is stagnating. Why them, of all companies? I offered the strategic reasoning, a meticulously crafted analysis. They have an established, albeit complacent, market share. Their infrastructure, though outdated, provides a foundational framework we can overhaul. Their customer base is loyal, but underserved by their lack of innovation. Acquiring them would give Ember Solutions immediate, significant market penetration and access to a demographic we haven't fully tapped yet. All of it was true. Every word was backed by comprehensive market research. But beneath the layers of business logic, the true motive simmered. It was about making a point, not just to them, but to myself, to the younger me, the one who walked those same hallways, invisible to their eyes. Maria nodded slowly, her analytical mind already processing the data. It's ambitious, and their board is traditional. They might not take kindly to an upstart tech company like ours, especially one led by... She trailed off, catching herself. But the unspoken prejudice hung in the air, a familiar ghost. Especially one led by me, I finished, a faint, knowing smile playing on my lips. Precisely. That's part of the challenge, and part of the opportunity. We began the process, quietly, discreetly. My legal team, led by the meticulous Mr. Chen, initiated preliminary inquiries. Investment bankers, adept at navigating the murky waters of corporate takeovers, worked tirelessly behind the scenes. We built our case, piece by piece, leveraging every strength of Ember Solutions against every weakness of Stanton Technologies. Their stock, I knew, had been underperforming for years. Their leadership, once formidable, had grown complacent, clinging to old ways while the world moved on. They were ripe for the taking, a sleeping giant waiting for a new dawn, or perhaps a reckoning. I found myself driving past their headquarters more often, a massive, imposing building that once felt like a fortress of unassailable power. Now, through my rearview mirror, it looked tired. I'd see Mr. Harrison exiting, perhaps going for lunch, still with that arrogant strut, his face etched with the lines of time, but his demeanor unchanged. Miss Davies, still impeccably dressed, her perfectly coiffed hair catching the sun, her eyes still holding that distant, dismissive quality when she glanced at the bustling street life around her. They moved through their world, oblivious to the quiet storm gathering around them. They wouldn't recognize me now. Not the man in the sleek car, not the man who commanded a thriving tech empire. To them, I was just another passerby, another faceless silhouette in the cityscape. And that was precisely how I wanted it. There were moments in the quiet solitude of my office where the weight of it all pressed down. Was this truly justice, or was it merely an elaborate form of revenge? The line blurred sometimes, but then I would recall the sting of their words, the crushing feeling of being dismissed, not for the quality of my idea, but for the color of my skin, for the humble uniform I wore. This wasn't just for me. It was for every young black person with a dream, told it was too big, too ambitious, too impossible. It was about demonstrating that brilliance knows no race, no class, no uniform. It was about breaking down those invisible barriers with undeniable power. The acquisition moved swiftly. Our offer was strong, compelling. Stanton's board, caught between loyalty to an outdated vision and the undeniable financial imperative, was deliberating. They saw only numbers, market dynamics, shareholder value. They saw an exit strategy. They were completely unaware of the man pulling the strings, the man who once cleaned the very conference room where their fate was now being decided. The final meeting was set. The terms were agreed upon. The papers were ready for signing. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled and thrilled me, that this was where the next chapter would begin. This was where the scales would finally tip. The nights blurred into mornings. My small apartment transformed into a war room. Every hour stolen from sleep, every penny saved, was poured into Vanguard Tech. My team, a diverse group of brilliant minds I'd handpicked, mirrored my own hunger. They believed in the vision. They believed in me. At Innovate Solutions, the atmosphere grew heavy. Rumors of financial trouble swirled like dust motes in the fluorescent lights. Layoffs became a hushed word in the hallways. The once vibrant energy, the confident chatter, had vanished. It was replaced by a tense silence, punctuated by the nervous tapping of keyboards. I overheard snippets of conversations. "We're looking for buyers," one executive whispered into a phone. "A strategic acquisition." They talked about unknown entities, about new market players. My heart pounded a rhythm against my ribs. They had no idea the unknown entity was already walking their floors, sweeping their offices. Sometimes Mr. Henderson, still oblivious, would corner me. He'd complain about the coffee machine or the streak on his window. He'd drone on about his golf game, his latest vacation. I'd listen, nodding, my mind miles away, planning, executing. His world was crumbling, and he was too wrapped up in his own trivialities to see it. It was a strange, disorienting dance. By day, I was invisible. By night, I was a general, leading a charge. Vanguard Tech wasn't just growing, it was soaring. Our AI platform, designed to revolutionize data management, had already attracted significant interest. We secured our Series B funding. The valuation reports came back, higher than even I had dared to dream. My investors, initially drawn by the disruptive potential, were now calling me a visionary. The irony was almost too much to bear. I remember one particularly long night. The city lights outside my window twinkled like scattered diamonds. My laptop screen glowed, displaying the final due diligence reports for Innovate Solutions. My company, Vanguard Tech, was ready. We had met every benchmark, cleared every hurdle. The acquisition was no longer a possibility. It was a certainty. A wave of emotion washed over me. Not triumph, not yet. It was a complex blend of exhaustion, validation, and a deep, quiet sadness for the man I used to be. The man who had once believed his worth was tied to the title on his paycheck. The man who had almost given up on his dream. I thought of the early days, the countless rejections, the investors who looked at my skin and saw only risk, not potential. A janitor with a tech startup? They'd scoffed. Cute. Those words echoed in my mind, fuel for the fire. This wasn't just about business, it was about proving them all wrong, proving everyone wrong. My legal team finalized the paperwork. The non disclosure agreements were airtight. The acquisition bid was submitted, accepted, and now, pending final board approval. The date was set for the announcement. It was a matter of days. I walked the halls of Innovate Solutions differently now, not with fear, not with subservience, with a quiet confidence. I looked at the faces of the people who had dismissed me, the ones who had laughed. I saw their anxiety, their uncertainty about their future, and I knew that soon their future would be in my hands. The board meeting was scheduled, the very meeting where my idea had been ridiculed, where my voice had been silenced. That meeting would be the stage, the place of my ultimate reveal. I had spent years perfecting my craft, not just in technology, but in patience, in observation, in understanding the subtle currents of power. Now, it was time to redirect those currents. One afternoon, I was cleaning Mr. Thompson's office, the CEO of Innovate Solutions. He was on the phone, his voice strained. Yes, the acquisition is confirmed, he said. The new owners are keen to integrate quickly. He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. We don't know much about them, honestly. A new player, Vanguard Tech, very secretive. I paused, feather duster in hand. A slight smile touched my lips. Very secretive indeed, I murmured to myself. He didn't hear me. He was too busy worrying about his own future. I finalized my presentation. Not the technical pitch, but the presentation. The one that would introduce me not as Elijah, the janitor, but as Elijah, the CEO of Vanguard Tech, the man who had bought their company. Every word was chosen with care, every slide designed for impact. It wasn't about vengeance, it was about justice, about showing them what true vision looked like, what true leadership embodied. My phone rang. It was my lead counsel. Elijah, he said, his voice brimming with excitement. It's official. The board of Innovate Solutions has unanimously approved the acquisition. Vanguard Tech is now the proud owner. A deep breath, a moment of silence. Thank you, I said, my voice steady. Now, we prepare for the meeting. The meeting where everything would change, where the tables would finally turn, where the janitor would become the owner. The stage was set, the players were in place, and I, the quiet observer, was ready to step into the spotlight. The truth was about to unfold. The papers lay open on my immense mahogany desk. Phoenix Tech, Omnicorp. The logos stared back at me. One represented my future, built from sweat and blood. The other, a past I had tried to outrun, but could never truly escape. It was almost time. The acquisition was finalized. All the legalities, the financial agreements, the board approvals, everything was in place. The final shareholder meeting for Omnicorp was set for tomorrow. That was when I would walk in, not as their janitor, but as their new owner. My mind drifted. I remembered the fluorescent hum of their hallways, the smell of industrial cleaner, the clatter of my cart. I remembered the faces. Mr. Davies, with his slicked back hair and patronizing smirk. Miss Albright, always too busy to make eye contact, her voice sharp as a razor when she spoke to me. I recalled that one meeting, the exact moment I had dared to speak, to offer an idea, a solution, really, my idea for a decentralized data management system. I saw their faces then, just as clearly as I saw them in my dreams. The polite sneers, the barely disguised amusement. Marcos, was it? Mr. Davies had said, his eyes scanning my uniform, not my face. Stick to polishing floors. Innovation is for the management. Miss Albright had chuckled, a soft, dismissive sound. It echoed in the large conference room, a sound that stripped away my dignity, piece by piece. They thought I was invisible. Ghost in the machine, a disposable commodity. That memory fueled me. It had fueled every late night, every rejected pitch, every moment of doubt. It was the spark that ignited Phoenix Tech. And now, it was bringing me full circle. My team, my inner circle, knew. They had witnessed my journey. They understood the significance of this moment. Are you ready, sir? Elena, my chief of staff, asked me earlier today. Her voice was gentle, knowing. I had looked at her, a slow smile forming. Ready, Elena. More than ready. But ready for what, exactly? Ready for their shock, their disbelief, their belated apologies? I wasn't sure. I wasn't doing this for their apologies. I was doing it for the boy I once was. The one who believed his ideas didn't matter because of where he stood, because of the color of his skin. I wanted them to see me, really see me, not the uniform, not the mop bucket, but the man who had built an empire from nothing while they presided over the slow decay of theirs. I pulled up the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. The final point was the announcement of the acquiring entity. My name wasn't listed. Not yet. That was deliberate. A small touch. A theatrical flourish, perhaps. But one I felt was earned. I walked to the panoramic window of my penthouse office. The city lights twinkled below, a vast network of dreams and struggles. I remembered looking out from the Omnicorp breakroom window, seeing the same skyline. But then, it felt distant, unattainable. Now, it felt like my backyard. The journey had been long, filled with moments of pure exhaustion, moments where I questioned everything, moments where the systemic barriers felt insurmountable. But I pushed through. For my mother, who had cleaned houses so I could have a chance. For my father, whose dreams had been quietly suffocated by prejudice. For every unseen hand, every unheard voice. Tomorrow wasn't just about business. It was about reclaiming a narrative. It was about showing that talent and vision are not confined by social constructs or racial prejudice. It was about a quiet, powerful vindication. I spent the evening alone, in contemplation, no grand celebrations, no pre-victory toasts, just a profound sense of calm, a quiet strength. I reviewed my notes one last time, the financials, the integration plan, the personnel changes, and then a small addition I had insisted upon, a simple, stark statement, a reminder of who I was and where I came from. It was crucial. It would be delivered at the precise moment. The sun began to rise, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. A new day, a new chapter, but first, the closing of an old one. I dressed carefully, meticulously, every detail considered. A crisp suit, my tie, a subtle nod to Phoenix Tech's brand colors. I looked in the mirror. I saw the janitor, but I also saw the CEO. The two had become one, integrated, indivisible. the past informing the present, guiding the future. The weight of anticipation settled over me, a familiar cloak. I was ready to walk into that room, ready to face them, ready for them to finally see. The final act was upon us. The heavy boardroom door clicked shut behind me. Their laughter, thin and sharp, still pricked at my ears. Stick to your mop, Michael, Mr. Henderson's words, dripping with a condescending amusement that made my skin crawl. Miss Albright's head to toe disdain, her smirk a twisted invitation to humiliation. Mr. Davies' dismissive, almost careless wave of his hand, as if I were a bothersome fly to be swatted away. They had put me in my place, they thought, shown me my level, a janitor. Nothing more, nothing less. I walked down the gleaming hallway, each step a deliberate, quiet drumbeat against the polished marble. It wasn't the rhythm of defeat. It was the steady, measured cadence of a man approaching the culmination of a life's work. Every insult, every cold glance, every whispered joke behind my back. I hadn't forgotten a single one. Each slight had been carefully filed away, not for bitterness, but as a deep, burning fuel. Fuel for this precise, inevitable moment. My hands, calloused and rough from years of manual labor, clenched slightly at my sides. They saw the hands of a cleaner, perpetually scrubbing away the grime of their existence. They hadn't seen the mind behind the eyes, the tireless hours spent hunched over a flickering screen, lines of code stretching into the early morning light. They hadn't seen the endless sketches, the complex algorithms, the relentless pursuit of an idea they had so casually, so cruelly scoffed at. An idea that, even as they mocked it, was already reshaping industries. An idea that was now worth not just millions, but billions. A quiet, undeniable fortune built on ingenuity and sheer stubborn will. A memory, sharp and poignant, cut through the present. My mother, her hands perpetually red and chafed from endless hours of washing dishes in other people's homes, her voice soft but firm, a guiding star in my young life. Michael, she'd whispered, stroking my hair, they can take your body, they can try to break your spirit, but they can never, ever take your mind. Keep learning, keep building, they'll underestimate you. Let them. Your mind is your freedom. Her words were a balm against the sting of every childhood slight, a persistent melodic echo against the cacophony of prejudice I faced daily. I reached my cleaning cart, a familiar anchor in the shifting tides of my life. The sterile, almost metallic scent of disinfectant, the worn-out mop, the bucket, the rags, my tools of perceived servitude. Today, they felt different, not just tools, but props, essential, symbolic props in a play I had been meticulously directing for years. The final act was about to begin. The stage was set. I glanced at my reflection in the highly polished marble floor. A janitor, a ghost in their opulent halls, invisible, effortlessly blending into the background, a silent observer of their hubris and their petty cruelties. Until now, until this very second. The muffled sounds from the boardroom grew louder again. A new voice, sharp and precise, formal, authoritative. Mr. Stern, the lead corporate lawyer for Sterling Tech. The air of tension was almost palpable, seeping through the thick wood of the door, filling the hallway with an electrified silence. The acquisition. It was about to be announced. I pushed my cart slowly, deliberately, towards the executive wing, towards the boardroom. My heart was calm, almost unnervingly so. This wasn't about raw anger anymore, though the sting of their words was fresh. It was about something deeper, a quiet, profound justice that hummed in my veins, a rectification of countless slights, not just against me, but against every person who had ever been judged solely by the color of their skin, by the perceived humble nature of their labor, by the uniform they wore. I heard Mr. Stern's voice rise, cutting through the anticipatory murmurs and the nervous coughs. Therefore, it is with grave significance, and after extensive deliberation, that I must announce Sterling Tech has been acquired, effective immediately. A collective gasp, a sudden, absolute silence. Then, a frantic, hushed whisper from inside the room. Acquired by whom? It was Mr. Henderson's voice, now high-pitched, laced with a sudden, desperate panic. The arrogant confidence had evaporated, replaced by genuine, unadulterated fear. The mocking laughter of moments ago had become a distant, almost forgotten echo. The acquiring company, Mr. Stern continued, his voice unwavering, a harbinger of seismic change, is Visionary Dynamics. The name hung in the air, potent and resonant, a powerful, modern name, a name I had meticulously crafted, piece by painful piece, dream by dream, a name that represented my journey, my fight, my quiet, unyielding triumph. I felt a subtle tremor run through the floorboards beneath my feet. Not an earthquake, but the slow, sure cracking of a foundation. The sudden, brutal shift in power was palpable, a heavy weight pressing down on the people inside that room. Henderson, Albright, Davies, their carefully constructed world, built on privilege and prejudice, was crumbling around them, and they still had no idea who held the hammer. I stopped my cart directly outside the boardroom door. The cold, smooth wood felt like destiny beneath my fingers. I took a deep, centering breath, a cleansing breath that expelled all residual doubt, all lingering resentment, leaving only clear resolve. Visionary Dynamics! Miss Albright's voice was a shaky whisper, laced with disbelief. But we've never even heard of them. The words were an admission of their own blind spots, their insular world. Mr. Stern cleared his throat, a sound that seemed to reverberate in the sudden quiet. Visionary Dynamics is a rapidly ascending tech company, known for its disruptive, innovation, and groundbreaking solutions. Their CEO has requested to address the board personally, immediately following this announcement. Another pause, a suffocating, almost unbearable silence. Every second stretched into an eternity. And then I pushed the door open, slowly, deliberately. The heavy wood swung inward with a soft, almost theatrical creak. All heads snapped towards me, their faces just moments ago contorted with shock and dawning fear over the acquisition, now twisted into utter, bewildered confusion. "Michael, what in God's name are you doing?" Mr. Henderson blurted out, his voice shrill with indignation and a hint of something deeper, something unsettling. "Get out. We are in a private, highly confidential meeting." I didn't flinch. My eyes, steady and unwavering, locked with his. I saw the flash of recognition, the habitual dismissal, the deep-seated disdain he usually reserved for me. But beneath it, something new flickered, a dawning uncertainty, a desperate, scrambling attempt to reconcile the image before him with the gravity of the situation. I stepped fully into the room. My uniform, once a symbol of my subservience, now felt like a cloak of undeniable quiet power. In my hand, I held a sleek silver tablet. Its screen glowed with a single, elegant, and now terrifyingly significant logo, the interlocking V and D of Visionary Dynamics, the very company that had just swallowed their empire. My gaze swept across the faces of Henderson, Albright, Davies. Their color had completely drained, leaving them pale and ghostly. Their eyes, wide and disbelieving, darted frantically between the unmistakable logo on my tablet and my unassuming janitor's attire. The profound, unbridgeable disconnect was too vast for their prejudiced minds to process, to comprehend. I believe, I said, my voice calm, clear, and steady, cutting through the stunned, petrified silence of the room like a scalpel. Someone needs to clarify the vision for Sterling Tech's future and how best to integrate their new leadership. I saw Miss Albright's jaw drop, literally. Mr. Davies gripped the edge of the polished conference table, his knuckles bone white, as if holding on for dear life. Mr. Henderson's eyes, already wide with shock, widened further, a dawning, terrible horror creeping into them. He had just mocked the janitor's tech idea, right there, in front of everyone. He had dismissed my intelligence, my ambition, my very humanity. And now, that janitor was standing before him, holding the emblem of the company that had just swallowed his. The irony was so immense, so absolute, it was almost poetic. My smile was slow, unwavering, a smile that held years of patience, years of struggle, years of being overlooked. It was the smile of a man who had waited a long, long time for this particular, perfect moment. A man who understood the true meaning of quiet power, and a man who was just, finally, getting started. The carefully constructed pieces of their privileged, insulated world were about to shatter into a million pieces. And I, the invisible janitor, was holding the hammer. The air in the boardroom was thick, stifling. The silence was not just quiet, it was a physical weight, crushing Mr. Sterling's forced smile, wiping Evelyn's disdain clean from her face. Their eyes, once full of contempt, now held a dawning horror. They flickered from the screens to Elijah, then back to the screens. They saw the company logo, the official press release, the name of the acquiring company, Ethel Systems, and then his face on the Meet Our Founder and CEO slide, a young, confident Elijah, looking back at them from the projected image. The same face they had just ridiculed, the same hands they had watched pushing a cleaning cart. Mr. Sterling stammered, a choked sound, like a gasp trapped in his throat. Evelyn's jaw went slack. Her perfectly coiffed hair seemed to droop. The color drained from her cheeks. Elijah let them process it. He watched the realization bloom, the shock, the shame, the absolute, undeniable terror. This was not about revenge, not truly. It was about seeing the truth revealed, the truth of their judgment, the truth of his worth. He walked to the head of the table, slowly, deliberately, each step a measured beat. He picked up the remote, the one Mr. Sterling had snatched from his hand earlier. He held it up, a small, symbolic gesture. Then he clicked it. The image on the screen changed. It was no longer the acquisition announcement. It was a new slide, a single word. Future. His voice was calm, clear, devoid of the accent he sometimes used, the one they had mimicked. It was the voice of command, the voice of a CEO. "Good morning, everyone," he began. His gaze swept across the room, lingering briefly on Mr. Sterling, then on Evelyn. "Or perhaps I should say, good afternoon. It seems we have a lot to discuss." Mr. Sterling tried to speak. Words caught. He cleared his throat. "Elijah, Mr. Vance, I don't understand." Elijah offered a small, humorless smile. "It's quite simple, Mr. Sterling. Ethel Systems has acquired Sterling Technologies, effective immediately." He paused. "And I am Elijah Vance, founder and CEO of Ethel Systems." A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. Other executives exchanged frantic glances. The junior staff looked on with wide-eyed disbelief. Some of them had been kind to him. Others, like Evelyn, had been dismissive. Their expressions were a mix of shock and morbid fascination. Elijah continued. My team has been observing Sterling Technologies for some time. We saw potential, untapped potential, but we also observed a certain rigidity, a lack of vision for true innovation, and a deeply ingrained culture of prejudice. His eyes met Evelyn's. She flinched, as if struck. The idea I presented this morning, Elijah stated. The one you found so amusing, Evelyn, so outlandish, Mr. Sterling. That idea is the core of Ethel's next generation platform. It is a multi-billion-dollar concept, an idea that your company, under its current leadership, was simply incapable of recognizing or valuing. Mr. Sterling pushed himself up, his face pale. Beads of sweat formed on his brow. This is an outrage. You pretended to be a janitor. This is deceit. Elijah shook his head slowly. No, Mr. Sterling, it was an observation. I didn't pretend. I simply performed the job I was assigned. And in doing so, I gained invaluable insight into the true operational culture of your company. Insights that confirmed our initial assessments. Insights that solidified our decision to not only acquire, but to implement significant changes. He turned to the room, to all the faces now looking at him with a mixture of awe and fear. Effective immediately, Elijah announced, his voice resonating with quiet authority. Mr. Sterling, your services are no longer required. You will be escorted out of the building. And Evelyn, he fixed his gaze on her. Her eyes were glazed over. Your role in human resources, a department meant to foster inclusion and respect, has been noted. Your immediate resignation is accepted. Consider your severance package a final, non-negotiable offer. Evelyn gasped, a tiny broken sound, her whole world crumbling around her. To the rest of you, Elijah continued, his voice softening slightly, but no less firm. A new era begins today, an era focused on true innovation, on merit, on respect for every individual, regardless of their background or perceived position. My team will be in touch to outline the new structure. We will evaluate every department, every employee, based on their actual contributions and their commitment to a genuinely inclusive future. He took a breath. The weight of the moment, the culmination of years of quiet work, years of enduring dismissals, years of being overlooked. The tech idea I shared this morning, Elijah concluded. It won't just be developed, it will launch, and it will redefine this industry, and it will do so under new leadership, leadership that recognizes genius, wherever it may come from. He gestured to the door. Two security guards, employees of Ethel Systems, not Sterling Technologies, stepped forward. They moved towards Mr. Sterling and Evelyn, their faces impassive. Mr. Sterling looked at Elijah one last time, his eyes burning with a mix of fury and utter defeat. He saw not the janitor he had mocked, but the force of nature he had underestimated, the man he had dismissed. As they were escorted out, the silence returned. But this time, it was different. It was heavy with anticipation, with the shock of a world turned upside down. Elijah stood at the head of the table. He looked out the window, at the city sprawling below. He thought of his mother, of all the battles she had fought, all the indignities she had endured. This was for her, for every dream that was almost snuffed out, for every voice that was almost silenced. He turned back to the remaining executives, his expression resolute. Now, he said, let's talk about the real future of this company. His journey had been long, filled with slights and struggles, but he had arrived, not just as a CEO, but as a symbol, a living testament to the power of perseverance, the enduring strength of a spirit that refused to be defined by others' narrow visions. The true work, he knew, had only just begun. But the message had been sent, loud and clear.